All right, welcome to the podcast. On today's show, we're with the creator, writer, director of Wayward, Jacquelyn. Thanks for joining us. For people who don't know, what did you just create?
I wrote and directed my first feature film, which will be coming out and released on Apple TV, Amazon, and Google Plus on April 5th.
So I got to watch it. Great movie, great cast. Kudos to you. What I love about the filmmaking process is a lot like entrepreneurship in the sense where these things exist in your head, right? This is an idea you have and you want to bring it to the world in a way, and you have to get a bunch of people involved. You got to get some capital involved, and then ultimately it takes years to execute these things. Where did this idea come from with Wayward? Where did it start?
Great question. And I think I agree with you that it's very much connected to the entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. I started out initially as a writer, and the reason I mentioned that is because I toiled writing novels for decades. And so I decided when I sort of ventured into filmmaking, I decided that I was going to not spend many, many years writing a script. I was going to write a script, and then I was going to execute it. And that's what I did. I wrote a script, and I decided part of the story of the road movie is because I figured that would be cheaper to make, which turned out not to be the case.
Okay.
And yeah, that was the steps. I decided I was going to write a script, and then I was going to do it as cheaply as possible just so that I could retain my independence.
And what is the story about? Give people a window into what Wayward is. Why the name? Give us a window into what the story is about.
I think the name Wayward, it's a story about a family, really, a girl who goes on a road trip with her mother, and along the way they pick up a hitchhiker because the mother wants to entertain her daughter. Mm-hmm. She's not speaking to her because they're moving and she doesn't want to move. And along the way, the journey to Los Angeles where they're moving doesn't go exactly as planned. And it's really a story. The reason why it's called Wayward is because every character in the film is sort of both, good and bad. Mm-hmm. But it's what leads them, I think, to revealing their goodness in a strange way.
Yeah, it does leave everyone with like their true self, I guess, exposed, despite their own journey.
Exactly.
You do highlight their journey in it.
Yeah.
And so what was your first step? So once you have the script,
right,
and you're done with it, and now you're like, okay, I got to go make this movie. What comes first? Is it the casting? Is it the money? What is the first step in trying to get this thing on film?
I mean, I think initially my plan was to make it literally for $100,000. I was going to do every part.
And is that possible? Because I don't have any concept as to...
Not with a road movie.
Okay. And what does that mean? What's a road movie?
Meaning we basically had so many locations because we were going from place to place. Okay. In the car.
That's right, because you're on a road trip in the car.
It's countless locations. We had over 20 locations and possibly even more. I was starting to count them last night so that I could be accurate. With a movie that you do in one location and you have actors basically doing it for free, it is possible to make a film for very little, especially nowadays. But because my movie required so many locations, it ended up not being the best idea for me to do it for that limited a budget. I still wanted to keep it as lean as possible because I think the thing that I was thinking about the most was I need to preserve my voice and my independence because if I take someone's money, money's not for free.
Yeah. They're going to give you their ideas and maybe change some things.
And, so you have to be really careful who you invite to collaborate with you. And that was something I was really clear about from the very beginning, which I think it was the best advice I was given was like, don't wait for years to make this. Don't wait till you have millions of dollars or the perfect star. Just go and do it. And that's what I did. And I think partly it's because I toiled for so long writing novels that I felt like I didn't have time to waste. And I wish I would have known that earlier.
That's a really powerful statement.
Yeah.
So you felt like you did waste some time?
Well, I mean, no time is wasted.
Or in what sense? In the sense of maybe getting mentally locked in to do it, or maybe not believing that you could do it? Where do you feel like the time lagged?
Well, I think I spent 10 years working on a novel, and if you're that sounds like the most insane thing, but when I have a lot of writer friends, and sometimes that's what it takes to write a really, really incredible book. You know, you have to go through so many caves to get to the truth that you're trying to tell. So no time is really wasted, but what appealed to me so much about filmmaking was I'm just going to go do it. You know, I don't have to wait. You really, when I was writing novels, you couldn't get really self-published. It's sort of, if you self-published, you lost your sort of literary integrity in some ways. Now I don't think that's so much the case. But with filmmaking, there was precedent that you could go and write a film, go get it made, and it would still be sort of something that was legitimate.
Mm-hmm. And as you're doing this, what is your goal for the film? Is it to just make it? Is it...
I had a lot of goals, and I wrote them down.
Okay, what were they?
So that was a good question, because I decided that I wanted to be really intentional, and I didn't want to just like do it to sort of, you know, have a film under my belt. I wanted to do something that I think was, first of all, something that I was proud of. That was my biggest goal. So I wasn't just going to do something half-heartedly. And, you know, I wanted to sort of be able to show people I knew and not be embarrassed. I'd written and directed short films before that. And in a few of them, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm not showing anyone. But that's part of the process, right? Yeah. Sort of to me getting to being able to make a film. So I wanted for myself to be proud of and for my collaborators to be proud of. And I wanted it to lead me to the next thing and to be able to, with my next thing that I was going to work on, to be able to use it as a reference for people really giving me money and trusting me with their money. So I didn't really feel that that could be the case with the first one. So I was very careful about and thrifty about who I asked for money and how much money I was willing to take for that reason, because I didn't really know that I could do it.
As you're saying this, it reminded me of like every high school science project I had to do.
Yeah.
In my head was always this like grandiose windmill that would like water would come and it would turn on electricity in this beautiful little town I had built.
Yeah.
And then it would get to the time of me building it and it was never what it was in my head. And then when I got into real estate development, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is this going to look the way these architects have shown me it's going to look?
Right.
And there's this complete fear of it won't. And then you're just not like, everyone's going to be disappointed, most of all yourself.
Right.
Luckily that didn't happen, but it's like this real fear that keeps people back. When you mentioned the thrifty piece, do you think that's the future of filmmaking, given the state of where everything seems to be in Hollywood?
I mean, I'm quite optimistic about filmmaking, just because there are so many avenues in which we can now sort of have our film seen, even though, of course, the theater piece is important. I think independent theaters need to come back. More of them need to be supported. And the reason they're not coming back is because they're not being supported. But I think it's never been a better time to be a filmmaker, just because, you know, digital, it's so much cheaper to make a film.
Yeah.
And you could just make a film. There's no reason you can make a film with your iPhone.
That's right.
You know, there's so many ways. I mean, Sean Baker, who just won the Oscar, his first film, Tangerine, which I think is a masterpiece, was shot with an iPhone. Wow. So, yeah. It can
Was he the one that during the award ceremony said to go support your independent theaters?
Yeah, he's masterful, and his film is just absolutely beautiful and worthy of being seen in the theaters. So I think it's still out. I'm just so excited for him because his film was made for not a lot of money, given the context of films being made right now, but also it's a masterpiece. So.
Yeah.
And not boring, even though it's an independent.
And how about the distribution of it? So in my head, as like a person today, I just think, okay, if I'm going to make something of a short film or something, I'm just going to put it on YouTube and see how it does. But that doesn't seem like that's there's a different way of doing it.
Yeah,
right?
You need a distributor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big piece.
And how do you find that?
Well, I mean, you have to make a film that's worthy of a distributor.
Okay.
Right? But I guess I wouldn't know, I'll be honest, whether there's a way to distribute it independently on YouTube or anywhere else. I just know that for the avenue that we're sort of seeking, which is legitimacy, you do have to have a distributor, and then they sort of, put you on all the different sites.
Yeah. When you did this script, I'm sure in your head you had characters that, or at least actors you wanted to play the characters in the movie. How difficult is that process to actually either get the people you want?
Yeah.
Because schedules have to align, money's a part of it. How long was that?
Well, maybe because I'd written novels for so long and sort of like, the universe was sort of saying, we're going to give you a break because you had 20 years of like,
Wow.
working in the dark. So I got very lucky with this movie. I wrote it really quickly.
So you felt like there was a timing to it.
I really do. I think that's where I will say to sort of people listening to your podcast that I don't think anything is wasted. Sort of things sort of like, compile and they add up to something at the end, even if you don't know what at the moment. And I think like all the work that I did prior to making the film did lead to a lot of things. Firstly, that I was able to write this script so quickly was that I'd been writing for 20 odd years before it. And then I got a casting director and she sort of helped me. She really felt like the script was worthy of, excellent work.
Wow.
Working actors, and so she helped me, and then we got this incredible actress, Jess Wexler, who plays the mother, and her agency sort of loved the project, and so they helped us get a lot of the actors who were also being represented by them, and so, but it all happened very quickly, and I sort of will say that it was all sort of, all the wasted years were leading up to this very quick momentum.
And then how long did the whole thing take to film?
We had 23 days, which is not a long time, especially when you're working with a child.
Yeah.
Because a child can only work for a very limited period of time.
She was amazing, by the way. She's an amazing actor.
She's extraordinary. Yeah, and she was
shockingly so.
I know.
I was shocked.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, she's an artist already.
Yeah.
She was recently in Hulu's show Under the Bridge. And I think wonderful things are in store for her.
100%. It was like honestly shocking to watch someone who's that great at that young age. Yeah, it's quite the performance. I mean, pretty wild because she's, and you know this because you wrote it, but it's like you can really see her facial expressions around going through not liking her mom. Do I do this? I don't want to do that. I'd rather do this. All just via body language.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, it just felt, I was like, that's incredible.
Thank you. That's such a compliment to her and to me.
Yeah.
And to the film, I would say.
And so at what point, so you have the distributor, and then in that you shoot it for 23 days.
Let me sort of rewind you.
Yeah.
The distributor doesn't really happen until after we've shot the film.
Okay.
We basically, we raised the money.
Yeah. How much did you raise?
Initially, it was $300,000, but it wasn't really shot for $300,000 because a third of our budget went to COVID testing. We were one of the first movies that were shot during COVID, which meant that the testing was like every 3 days. You had to send it into a lab. It wasn't like what became COVID testing.
Wow.
You had to have a nurse, and it was very expensive.
How much was that?
A third of our budget, I will say that.
That's crazy.
A third of $300,000. So
that's crazy.
I want to give props to my producer right here because he managed to make a film that looks like it's so expensive for really no money, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
So Ian Michaels, he's just really a mastermind in this department. I really very lucky that I got him to be part of this with me.
That's so crazy. And so when did you shoot this? What year?
We shot this 2021.
Okay.
So 4 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm sure for the actors, it was probably a blessing because there wasn't much going on, I would imagine.
Well, that was part of the lucky thing of making it during COVID. COVID was sort of a very lucky time for me for that reason, because I was able to make a film for that amount of money with incredible actors who were willing to work on this film because nothing was happening at the time. And the same with the crew. I got incredible artists sort of working on our crew. Our production designer was incredible, and he's done all kinds of enormous things, but he worked on my film because there was nothing happening at the time.
Give people a window into raising capital for a film. What is raising money like when you do something like this?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on, what your budget is. I think because our budget was only $300,000, I could go pitch people. And I told them, I was saying this to someone the other day, I didn't quite lie, but I exaggerated about the circumstances. I said, no one's working right now. I'm going to get these incredible actors. That's going to give me all these opportunities. Because the movie costs so little to make, there's a real opportunity to make the money back. So, I mean, it was partly true, and it ended up being completely true at the time because we got these incredible actors sort of attached to our project.
And how does someone recoup their money? How does that happen?
Well, it's at the end.
Okay.
Sort of once we get the distribution deal, and it's still possible that we might crack a deal with one of the streamers before we go on VOD.
Okay.
And that means we sell it for a lump sum, and then the people who invested in the film get the money, their money first.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, then they get they get 50% of the profit after the money is returned to them.
And so then you're done the movie, and then you're showcasing it to find the distributor. Is that how that works?
Well, first you go in and you try to sort of get into as many festivals as possible.
Okay.
Good festivals. And then you sort of start shopping around for a distributor.
Okay.
And then the distributor sort of both negotiates to sort of possibly sell your movie for a lump sum and or go on VOD, which is we're still a sort of in between.
Okay.
Either could happen.
How difficult is that process?
I'm in it. So I sort of don't.
Yeah, how do you do that?
The distributor process?
Yeah, just the point of like how much competition is out there? How many films are these people that have to select one?
Yeah.
Or maybe several, but they're...
I think it's really competitive, but it's something I didn't really educate myself on because if I would have like gotten into my brain about like it's not possible.
Yeah.
And for me, I just really decided the most important thing is I do the best I can in terms of directing this film and editing this film. And then I can't control the rest.
Yeah.
I have to create the best product I can, and that's where my attention's going to go.
On the product.
And that's it. And the rest, if I start worrying about like, oh, there are many other movies, then that part's going to completely just get in my brain.
This is the one thing I tell all the every entrepreneur I talk to.
Yeah.
It's like, if you were to really think about what you're doing and you were to write it all down, the things that you could potentially fail at, you won't do anything.
Exactly.
But if you just put if you're able to block it out, which takes time, it takes it takes years, it takes some failures even.
Yeah.
But once you learn that, if you just place all your attention on the product and make the product as best in your head as you possibly can, all the people, all the greats that you have in mind for this project will then flock to that product. And it'll feel like magic, but it's not. It's
great advice because I think it's like action oriented.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you action orient, you're sort of giving room for I don't want to sound like, like a Southern California sort of like spiritual person, but there is room for the divine to sort of like squeeze in there and participate with you.
That's a real thing. I call it the invisible bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
two
like
things at the same time.
You can find God, you can build an invisible bridge.
Yeah.
You can manifest. All these words are real things.
Yeah.
And I think it's a function of you thinking about it. So if you're thinking about something, you're probably going to walk in that direction. So it doesn't sound too woo-woo, and there's like science on it. There's like Stanford scientists that studied literally manifestation on this topic.
But I mean, in addition to what you're saying, you do have to be a sort of like a make-believer. I don't know if that's a word in English, but you have to sort of believe that you have to sort of on some level think outside of the parameters of what people believe is possible.
Yeah.
And that takes great imagination, and that's where all the great things that exist have been created, I think.
6 months from now, where is this? Where are you? Where is the film? What does it look like in your head?
I really think big things for the film. I think it's a small film, but it's a very specific movie.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to people on all kinds of different journeys. And that's what I love about it. And I think it's been hard to get people's eyeballs on it, but once we do, people just go crazy about it. It's kind of been overwhelming because I love the movie. I made it. That was my biggest goal, like I said, to be proud of it. But it's been kind of overwhelming and moving to sort of witness how many people are sort of taken by it and feel an affinity to it. It's across the board. People I didn't even think would be men.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Men. I just was surprised by that.
As a creator, there's two sides of it, I think, for you, and you can answer this or not. But the way I look at it is, in some way, a form of this is your expression, which means this lives within you, this story, in some way. But then as a writer-director, you're probably also trying to let in interpretation. And you don't want to, I guess, cement why certain things happen in the movie. You want the audience, almost like a musician. Like you want the person to hear the notes and then they will conclude from their own story what it means to them.
Right. It's a collaborative process the whole way around in terms of once you start inviting people into it to be part of the creation of it. And then when people start watching it, that's part of the creation as well and expanding of it, I feel.
Okay.
You know, it's sort of all, we're all sort of in the creation process of it. And that's why when you ask me what do you see happening to it in 6 months, I mean, I think it's already beyond my wildest imaginations.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just the start of it. Like, I just wanted to make something I was super proud of and not ashamed to show to people. And I mean, so many other incredible, wild things have happened. You know, we were at Deauville Film Festival, which is this very fancy festival, which I never even dreamt we would be able to be in. And I mean, when you go to that festival in particular, they have theaters of 2,000 people, and they book them, and your movie gets seen 3 times a day, and just seeing it with that kind of audience was just something I hadn't even imagined.
So what do you think is on the horizon for your career? Like what do you want to happen personally for you after this?
I mean, I'm already working on my next project, my next script, but I guess
is it Wayward too? What is it?
It's sort of like it's a mashup of like Fargo and Y Tu Mamá También from, I don't know if you know that movie by Alfonso Cuarón. He's like amazing. Okay. I think it's sort of, hopefully, I mean, I hope to be able to raise money for it, but again, want to be able to maintain my independence because I think that's, having made my first film, I think that's my goal, to just always make sure that it's my voice. The more specific and independent a filmmaker is, I've concluded, the better the work is. I think it's one of those things that it's important to collaborate, but it's also important to be saying something that's deep and true.
How about books? Will you still continue to write novels?
I don't. Maybe when I'm 90, I will return.
As your retirement
yeah,
plan?
I don't think so. It's very different. I have a friend who's like very celebrated writer, and she's been working on this book for 6 years. This is a very different process. And what I love about what I experienced making this film is that it was, 1, 2, 3. And I imagine it's not always going to be like that. Maybe my budget was really small.
Yeah.
My aspirations were not enormous, but I just think that's the way I want to go. I just want to decide and go do it. And it may not be like the perfect money. It may not be the perfect actor that I had hoped for, but it'll be the right one for that project.
All right, and share with us if you can. So the way I look at entrepreneurial journey, or even maybe for yourself, is you have a bigger goal you want to get to.
Right.
And so you have to have little wins along the way.
Yeah.
And so for you, is there like a story you really want to share, but you want to only share that story when you know you can get the money required and the actor required and the team required?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm a little superstitious in terms of saying, like, let me tell you the story about the film I'm going to make next.
Okay.
But I know I'm going to make a next.
Yeah.
And I know that I've gotten so much smarter about so many things. So this project, which I am so proud of, and I hope many people, a wider audience, will come to it, is definitely leading me to being able to make my next film and being able to sort of do it for a lot more money and be maybe bolder, braver, wilder because I've had this experience with my first. And I would never be able to go to my next thing and then my next thing without going through this journey, I don't think.
Where can people support? Where can they watch the film?
Thank you
Where
for
will it be?
asking.
Yeah.
Yes, like I said, April 5th, it will be available on Apple TV, Amazon, and Google+.
That's amazing. Wayward.
Wayward. Yes.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, share with your friends, your family, or anyone you might think might benefit from the conversation we've had today. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more people who can benefit from our discussions. The best way to stay connected with us and get the latest updates on future episodes is through our social media channels. You can find us at Startup Storefront. We'll be back next Tuesday with another great episode. See you then.